welcome to Adelante Chicago. I'm Ana Belaval for Lourdes Duarte. Thank you so much for joining us today. Power is still being restored to parts of Puerto Rico after a series of strong earthquakes. A magnitude 6.4 quake on Tuesday was the strongest to hit the island in more than 100 years. The quake has also forced roads to be closed, including one next to a mountain that partially collapsed. Some people are staying outside as aftershocks continue. Marisela Burgos has more.
Genoveva Quiñones describes what two of her businesses looked like before Tuesday's early morning powerful earthquake.
I can't explain to you how I felt when I saw the destruction.
It's still difficult for her to walk around the building where her pizza place and taco maker shop used to be.
If we were inside, we wouldn't be talking today.
The taco maker restaurant was her first business at the age of 22.
In 2 minutes, 1 minute, everything fell to the ground that I worked so hard for. 10 years, gone in nothing.
Driving around Guánica, Puerto Rico, there's evidence everywhere of the magnitude of the 6.4 earthquake.
I've never experienced something like this in my life to be forced out of my home, but we are okay.
Madeline Feliciano Lugo and 13 other family members and friends are staying at a shelter. She shared pictures of a large hole that formed in her backyard and the damage the tremor did inside her house, knocking items to the floor.
It was horrible for us because we didn't expect something like that to happen.
She feels safer sleeping under a tent out in the open than in her own home. She isn't alone.
We are going to stay at this shelter until we are told it is safe for us to return to our home.
And she still feels the ground moving, nervous. Another one as intense will hit again.
Yes, I am afraid because my home felt like gelatin when it moved.
Joining us now via Skype from Puerto Rico is Elizabeth Vanacore. She's a seismologist and associate research professor at the University of Puerto Rico in Mayagüez. How are you, doctor? Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm doing well, thank you.
Is the ground not shaking under you right now?
Not right now. We have felt a few tremors throughout the day here at the Puerto Rico Seismic Network. And one thing to note is with a sequence like this, especially after the 6.4, there are aftershocks, and some of them will be felt in the island, especially across the south and the southwestern area.
After the hurricane, I would always ask my family, is the power back? I can't believe I'm asking the same question again.
Yeah, it depends on where you are.
Yeah.
It's essentially a bit of potluck.
Yeah.
In Mayagüez, there are parts that have power and parts that do not right now.
Mm-hmm. So the question we all ask ourselves, I grew up in Puerto Rico, we would have tremors here and there, and I remember always waiting for that big one, right? But we had never had 2 weeks of constant tremors and then a 6.4 magnitude earthquake that happened Tuesday, which was the strongest in 100 years. What is going on in the southeastern part of the island?
Southwestern part of the island.
I'm sorry, southwest.
In the southwestern part of the island, what we think is going on is a few years ago, researchers here at the University of Puerto Rico, Mayagüez, specifically Dr. Jim Joyce, who is a part of our Department of Geology here, found a fault called the Punta Mantava fault. And from the seismicity, my current working hypothesis is that the sequence actually started along the oceanward extension of this fault. Mm-hmm. And part of the reason people are getting so severely impacted by these events is that these events are shallow, they're significant, and they're very close to the population. And those three factors combined means that people are feeling many more of these earthquakes. Right now in our records, we have probably at this point well over 90 earthquakes that have been felt by the population that have been reported to us.
Goodness, and that's in a matter of how many weeks?
This is since December 28th.
Right.
Is when everything started happening in southwestern Puerto Rico.
And we had a 6.4 magnitude, and I know that my entire family and friends are all on pins and needles. Is there any way to predict if another big one will happen, if we're going to have an even more catastrophic one?
The unfortunate thing about earthquakes is really the only thing that's predictable about an earthquake is that it's sometimes unpredictable.
Right.
However, really, if you're looking at aftershock sequences, we do have some statistics based on other studies in other regions. There are three basic scenarios that can happen from here. The first scenario, which I think is the most likely, is that this 6.4 was the largest event of the sequence, and at this point we'll have an aftershocks, and that will decrease in frequency over time. This is the most likely scenario. A less likely scenario is that there'll be another event that is a doublet. That'll be roughly the same magnitude in the same location as the 6.4. This, of course, with already weakened infrastructure, would be quite devastating to the people of the island. And then the least likely scenario would be a larger magnitude event. Just because it's less likely, however, doesn't mean it's not possible.
Right, right. And I've heard theories from a week of tremors to a year of tremors. What do you know?
The thing is with the tremors, earthquakes are going to continue. There are going to be aftershocks. There are going to be at least several weeks where people are going to continue to feel aftershocks or longer. There's no way to determine exactly when these aftershocks will end, because a significant aftershock, let's say even we have a 4.7 or a 5, will also have its own aftershocks to go with it.
Right, that's one part that had me confused, because when the 6.4 happened, then some of the aftershocks were 4 point something, 5 point something. Like, what's an aftershock and what's considered the earthquake? Well,
that's always something that's usually done in post-analysis. It's almost Monday morning quarterbacking. So right now, it's usually defined by the largest event in a sequence of earthquakes. And so right now, the largest event we have is the 6.4. And so everything before that would be deemed a foreshock. The 6.4 would be deemed the main shock, and anything after would be considered aftershocks. And the aftershocks are defined as earthquakes that are smaller or as the same magnitude as the main shock, that occur after the time of the main shock.
Yeah, it's what we call in Spanish temblores, or at least in Puerto Rico, that's what we call them. And then we call the earthquake the terremoto. So I think temblores is something that we're going to have to get used to, is what I am gathering. Would you recommend anyone who's thinking about going to Puerto Rico to continue with their plans, or maybe head down there to help, or are they going to add a problem to the population?
Well, the one thing to note is places like San Juan are open for business.
Right.
So if you're going on a cruise or going to San Juan, there's no reason not to continue with your plans. If you're coming down and want to go into those areas, the best thing to do is to check and coordinate. If you're going down to help, check and coordinate with our local emergency management.
Right.
Because if you go down into the population area, right now, and they're leaving Guanica, there isn't power right now. And there's very little water, so that could be a negative impact.
Right. You don't want to cause more harm than good. Dr. Vanacore, thank you so much for your valuable information. Stay safe, and thank you for everything.
Thank you.